Thanks for being here this morning. This is one of the few Sundays out of the year that we have combined classes, usually when missionaries or, in this case, interns are in town. We have a very special intern with us today, one that most of you know, Amy Walton and her group, Chris and Michelle, right? Chris is from Twickenham and Michelle is from Dallas, and they are going to spend the next, 40 minutes talking about their time in Kenya this year. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris, and he's going to talk about Made in the Streets.
All right, well, as he said, my name is Chris, and we have Amy and Michelle over here. So I think before we go anywhere, if we can go and play the video.
Welcome to Made in the Streets. This is a place where kids are rescued off the streets and the slums of Mathare in Nairobi, Kenya, and given a chance for a new life. When they come to Made in the Streets, we provide them with a place to sleep, food, and offer them education in English, maths. Throughout their stay at MITS, they are taught about the Bible and living a life for God. But before all that, they had nothing.
What mates have done to me, it's a big thing. They took me when I was 13, I am boy. Till now I'm 19 years old, and they have given me food, shelter, and they have given me clothes.
What meets has changed me. When I was in the street, I didn't know God, but now I know God, and I didn't know how to talk I didn't know how to talk English, but now I can speak English. And I used to fight every day, but now I don't fight and I don't abuse people. And Made in the Street have given me education and skills.
One of the things is that Made in the Street is the first program that made me know Jesus Christ as my Savior. It also made me change from like sniffing glue. I used to sniff glue, take bang, smoking cigarette, and taking alcohol. All those things I used to take them before I started being in Made in the Street.
On the street, they had no home, had no food, and no family. But here, they have a home. They have food. They have family.
Takes my breath away. So hard to.
Okay. Me as well as Amy, Michelle, and 3 others who are currently at another congregation right now in the area doing the same presentation are part of what's known as the Handmade Tour. And so what we do is we go around to different churches in the southeast after being in Kenya at the Made in the Streets for about a month. Basically doing this, we just we'll be telling the stories of the kids, what Made in the Streets does, just about the transforming power of God in these children. It's an amazing thing to see, and it's, I don't even have other words for that. It's just quite amazing. So I believe Amy has more to say on this, what God's doing there.
Okay. So as Chris said, we did get to spend a month in Kenya, and what I really loved about our time there was in the past when I've done mission trips and things like that, it's been shorter term. We were there for a week or so, which was great, and we got to do a lot of things. But while we were in Kenya, we got to be there for a month. So about the 2-week period, we really hit this spot where we were really getting to experience life with them. We became part of their daily routine, and we really got to share with them. And it wasn't like we were just visitors anymore. It was natural when we came into a classroom and started helping, or it was natural whenever we walked into chapel and found seats. And so it was really neat to just be a part of that experience. And while we were there, we got to visit some of the bases. And what really struck me at the bases is that's where all of our kids are before. And when we went up to the bases, we weren't really sure what to expect. We were a little nervous. We were walking down, and Michelle and I were getting marriage proposals, walking on the streets, and so fending off all our suitors, we made it to the where the kids hang out. And a base, what they call a base, is where kids that are on the streets, and older people too, but mainly kids, they hang out and kind of form a community there. And that's where they sleep and kind of find comfort in each other. And so we went to visit, and while we were standing there, and we're standing on trash. We're standing in the middle of this open field area that they had just like kind of torn down some shops. And the kids in front of us are literally just sitting on like piles of garbage and old tires. And I just was filled with this feeling of just like sorrow and just like wanting the better for them. But then as I looked at the kids and I saw our kids in their faces, and I had this flash of seeing our kids in their place, and I was filled with hope because our kids aren't there anymore. Our kids aren't sitting on trash. They're sitting in a chair in a classroom. And that's what Made in the Streets is about. It's about God's power of transforming these kids' lives, and not just the physical sense of them getting out, but while they're on the streets, they are sniffing glue and they are stealing and getting into trouble. But Made in the Streets, through God, transforms them into what they know now as they are children of God, and they have their identity in Christ. And we really got to witness that. And it was so powerful to just get to be there and get to see that. And so while Chris and I had the privilege to get to interview some of the graduates from Made in the Streets, it was really cool. They came over to our house after church one day, and we had lunch with them, and Chris and I were interviewing them. One of the quotes that really stuck out to me, one of the boys said, "In 2007, I was just a street kid that no one cared about, but now I'm something." And that really stuck out to me because God is transforming these kids' lives. And just to get to see that firsthand and just get to really see God working. Someone at our last stop asked us, what is different about Made in the Streets? Why is it different than any other nonprofit organization that works with street kids? And I really loved Michelle's answer. She said something along the lines of, the kids don't just get to come off the streets and get into a school. They get to come into a family. And I think that's really true about Made in the Streets. And I know a group from here went to Made in the Streets last year, and I know they can attest to that it's true. You can't walk into Made in the Streets without just feeling the love that is there for these kids. And what's really cool is a lot of our staff are actually former street kids. And so God has just transformed their hearts and made them, He's built them for this position. When they were there, they would have never guessed that they would be teaching kids that were once in their position. And so it was really neat to get to talk to them and really learn full circle what Made in the Streets is about. And just that, how awesome our God is and how He can transform these kids that are on the streets and don't know what hope is. And I wish there was time to tell you all of the kids' stories because they're all powerful in their own way, but we are going to get to share some of them, and we're excited about that. One of my favorites is about Mary. Mary is now a graduate. Mary was once, she left her home, she ran away, there wasn't enough money to feed her, and her parents had just kind of let her do whatever. So she left to find food. So Mary was scrounging around in the garbage and trying to find things to eat, and then she found Made in the Streets, and God brought her there, and Mary did well through the Learning Center. She became a catering skills center kid, and now Mary teaches catering to students that are, some are her age, some are older than her, and she's working for an orphanage now, and so she gets to teach catering to them and to people in the area, and she's a house mom for the orphanage. And just talking to Mary, she never would have realized that God was going to bring her this far. And it was really cool because in all of the interviews, they all brought the glory back to God. They all said, as you all saw in the video, it's the first place that a lot of them really find their identity in Christ, and we love that. And a big thing about God's transforming power, we're really getting to see that right now because we just got 5 new students last week. 5 new girls were brought to Made in the Streets, and we're really excited about that. There were 12 that were brought towards the beginning of the year. Do you remember what month? January, I think? They were brought in January, and so we kind of got to see the beginning stages, and it was really cool to see just their joy and everything already. That it's just a complete transformation from the streets to where they are now, and that's what Made in the Streets is about. It's about letting God transform these kids' hearts and just loving them and working through them. And so I told you that there's 5 new students, and we're excited because Chris is going to share some of those stories.
Okay, one of these new students, the 5 new students that just came in about a week ago, her name is Catherine. Unfortunately, because it was a week ago and we were back in the States then, we did not get to meet her. However, we did get to hear her story, and it's just as powerful as all of them. All the stories are powerful, but in her story, she had 3 siblings. Her father was a barber. Her mother worked to collect trash for pig food, basically. And so after a while, I forget exactly what the reason for it, but she ends up running away from home. She ends up being at a friend's house for a while, and that friend leaves, and she finds herself on the streets in Kenya, where she's begging for food or money just to get by. And then there's an old man there who comes out every day to toss food out, some just food scraps. And she's constantly begging for money at hotels and just wherever she can find. A lot of it, she'll use the money to purchase food. Sometimes it's drugs, such as glue, or even jet fuel, which they huff just for a high, which it's a short-term elimination to their hunger. After a while, one of her friends told her about Made in the Streets. Being interested in it, she tries it out. Her first reaction was that it's definitely better than the street. There's hot water, there's food, there's a loving atmosphere. She's not being abused anymore. And looking back at it now, we can see here she could be, or she was for a while. She was on the street, and then now she's at Made in the Street. She's learning valuable skills. She's really experiencing God working through her, working around her. It's amazing, and the story is a very similar story in all 5 of these. But she couldn't be where she is now without help from Kenyans, and even from people in the States. And so one of the things we're doing on this tour is we'll be telling about a sponsorship program, which Michelle is going to tell a little bit about.
As Chris talked about, our new girl, Catherine, as well as the 4 other girls, will be in need of sponsors. But first, we also want to look at what Catherine's life at Made in the Streets can look like. While she's there, she's very interested in hairdressing, and so salon and hairdressing is one of the skills that students can learn once they turn 16. So she'll learn these skills. She'll be able to go out in the week to find a client base to make money for herself, and while she's there, the money that she makes, Made in the Streets will help her to learn about how to make a savings account so that she will have that money once she graduates to be able to put toward finding a home, to finding a job, to finding ways to support herself. She'll be able to make friends as she's learning about as she's sitting in her classes, as she's learning about God. She might walk into chapel one day with maybe her best friend Rahema or Beatrice. As she's sitting in classes, she'll form relationships with her teachers who will become mentors and friends with the dorm parents. She'll just enjoy her free time. She'll enjoy in the afternoon after the kids work on the farm, enjoying a chai in the school building as they hang out for a couple hours to unwind. We know that Catherine's life can look like this because we've seen it in countless other students, and that hasn't been possible without the help of people back home. And so, yeah, we just have a few more pictures of some of the students and how they've been interacting. And they love playing games, they love laughing. It is really incredible to see that once you take kids out of this element of living a life of hardship and oppression on the streets, how they so quickly go back to being joyful children. And so we're kicking off a new sponsorship program in October, and it's called Remade, no longer allowing the streets to define us. And I love that because it incorporates made in the streets with this idea of being remade in the image of God. But I also just love the image of the shattered glass and how that can be changed, how that can be fixed, how it can be remade into something beautiful in the identity of Christ. But that's not the only way to get involved. There are ways to get involved for people of all ages. So we do have Remade, our sponsorship program, but also a really exciting program that we just recently kicked off is for high school students, and it's called Frontline. So for high school students who are interested in getting involved with Made in the Streets, but maybe aren't able to go over to Kenya to the center, can get involved. Being a frontliner involves hosting an awareness event, one in the fall and one in the spring, for either your church or your school or just your community to tell people about Made in the Streets. So we give you all the supplies you need to be able to share these stories, the promotional materials you need so that you can go out and you can share what God is doing through these kids' life. And then if you're a college student, then you can be involved with the Handmade Tour, just as Kristen, Amy, and I are. It's a simple application online in August, and then you find out in December. And the rest of the spring semester, you're getting prepared for your trip to Kenya. You spend a weekend in LA getting to know your team and getting to learn more about Made in the Streets. And then you get to go to Kenya and have these wonderful experiences together. So I know for me, when I hear these things, that I'm immediately moved by it, and I just say, I want to get involved. How can I help? So these are just a few of the ways to get involved with Made in the Streets, or it might even be a group from the church going and visiting, as Amy said that a group had done that before, and spending a week or two at Made in the Streets, seeing firsthand what God is doing in these kids' lives. So we'll be outside. We have a table with items that the students have made or helped to make that we'll be able to sell, and also we can answer more questions about any of these three programs. But right now we'll open it up for question and answer. If anybody has any more that they'd like to know or wants to hear any more stories, we can answer those.
We have the Easley Center, which there's a staff of people that work at the Easley Center every day. And during the week, the Easley Center hosts activities for the kids. And so, and groups from the Easley Center of the staff will go into the streets where they know kids hang out. And they'll go talk to them and explain, hey, we're from the, Made in the Streets. And they all know where Easley is because it's a main base. And so they say, we have a center in Easley. We would love for you to come join in on our activities. And so the kids can come to Easley and do the activities every day during the days. And from there, they have the opportunity to make the decision with the staff that they would like to actually come to Made in the Streets. And so first they get kind of acclimated to the process and to the program through the Easley Center. And then every other Friday, the staff from Made in the Streets in Kamulu, which is the main center where the kids stay, that staff goes into the streets and just talks to the kids. It's very relationship based. They just want to bring the kids in and show them that they're loved, even if they don't make it to the Easley Center, they don't make it into Made in the Streets if they don't make that decision. Yes. There's not really a max enrollment that they have right now. It's kind of a slower process of getting kids in. They bring them in groups as they feel that they're ready. And so right now there's 88, and then we just got 5, so 93. And they're currently working on different ideas of where they can build and different things to add more.
Also, one thing before students do attend Made in the Streets, each student has to say, I am ready to create a new life. I am ready to give up the drugs, give up the stealing, give up the fighting, and show that to the Eastleigh staff to show that they are prepared to do this. Fortunately, if the kid is on glue, then that is easier to work the addiction off than harsher drugs, I suppose. So they are able to quickly fight that addiction. And then they also, the Made in the Street staff finds the closest living relative, typically a parent or a grandparent or an aunt, who then signs off a form that allows the child to live at Made in the Streets. With a large boarding school that Made in the Streets acts as, then they do have close ties with the portion of the Kenyan government that focuses on child welfare and child education, and so they make sure that everything is very much done appropriately by the procedures, so that the parents understand where their child will be and that they are creating a better life for themselves.
Did you have a question, sir? Oh, no, that's...
Usually students come in anywhere from about 12 to 14 years. It just kind of depends. And then they graduate the program at about 18. They usually spend about the first 4 years in the Learning Center, getting basically a primary education, learning English, math, science, things like that. And then they go into the Skills Center, where they learn a certain trade of their choice, like woodworking, sewing and tailoring, catering, cosmetology. So yeah, it's about 6 years for the whole program.
And they do teach English in the schools, and that's because we're not just like forcing an American thing on these kids. English is actually the language of education in Kenya, and so if you know English, then you're much more likely to get a job because that means that you've been to school. And so all of the schools in Kenya teach English. Any other questions? Yes. So I'm not really sure exactly what the demand is like. I know that the kids, a lot of them go to the Eastleigh Center, but not all of them are interested in actually going to Made in the Streets. I can't give you an exact answer on like what the demand is, but they do accept kids in groups, and so every few months they do a group, but they keep the kids that are wanting to in a safe environment so that they don't go back to drugs and all of that. And so I'm not really sure what the exact demand is versus what they can handle, but I know that not all of the kids are interested in coming to actually Made in the main program, because a lot of them aren't ready to give up what they have right now because they don't realize that there's something better. Right, yes. I don't know of any time that they've really had to turn anyone down. They, like Michelle was talking about, they do look for commitment, and so once they see that commitment, they talk to them about coming. Yes. The Eastleigh Center does have staff that addresses those things. In Eastleigh, they have ways of handling small medical things, and I know Chad has been involved in that when he's gone. They can help with medical things at the Eastleigh Center, and then they have a clinic that I think they can take them to and things like that. And then they have they have staff that deals with more of their emotional needs too. They have, I'm sorry? Yes, they have one of the Eastleigh staff works with that, and they are trained in like psychology and that kind of thing, and so they work with that side of the issues.
You're mentioning the Eastleigh Center and Made in the
Yes. The Eastleigh Center and Made in the Streets are connected. That's just the two different parts of Made in the Streets. Yes, it's like different campuses. But Made in the Streets as a whole is the Eastleigh Center and the campus at Kamulu, which is what we've been referring to as Made in the Streets. Sorry, that can be confusing. We didn't explain that very well. So whenever the kids are living on the streets, the Eastleigh Center is close by, and so that is where they do the day programs and things, and it is a part of Made in the Streets. And then once they make the commitment to come to the Kamulu campus, and that's where the school is and the skills center and their dorms and things. And so it's kind of like a two-part thing. They go to Eastleigh and they're part of the day program, and then they decide to come to Kamulu. And Kamulu is a little village about 45 minutes from Eastleigh, and so Kamulu's goal is to get them out of the street environment.
Yeah, we did a few base visits, which is basically, I guess you could say, a home for street kids. It's not really a home. It's usually a pile of trash or something, or just a certain area. The base visits we did had, I only went on one. It had, I think, about 5 or 6 kids there. But I don't even know how many bases there are. So, I mean, they estimate there's anywhere from about 30,000 to 60,000 street kids in Nairobi, depending on who you ask. So, I mean, obviously you don't see all those at once, but just driving through town, we'd see a few here, a few there. So they kind of separate into little groups, which are they're called gangs, and they basically congregate at certain bases. So if that answers your question.
Chris was sick the first day that we did base visits, and the first base was a little bigger than the one that we went on the next time. The first one we went to probably had 20, and then there were more like wandering around that didn't come over to us. And like you said, they're all over. You can find them. So, and Eastleigh, I know we weren't able to go to Eastleigh because there's a large police presence in Eastleigh right now, and it wasn't safe for us to go. But I know Eastleigh has more bases than where we were, and so it just depends on the base of how big it is.
How many kids daily are
I think it really depends on the day. I'm not really sure how many. Michelle might be able to answer that.
I'm not sure about the Eastleigh Center, but when we were there, then there was a group from the Hardin Valley Church of Christ in Knoxville, Tennessee, and they were hosting sort of a VBS all week for students who had been at the Eastleigh Center, and then they went out to a separate camp since the Hardin Valley group was not able to go to Eastleigh, and they said that they started with about 40 or 45 kids at the beginning of the week, and by the end they were close to 100. So each day more and more kids would just keep coming as they did see, oh hey, there are activities, there's a meal we can get, so something other than just trying to eat trash or find scraps. So kind of as the students or as the kids hear about it, then they'll tell their friends and they'll bring them all there. So it'll sort of depend on what's going on. We went there really to observe. The Handmade Tour is an awareness tour, so we went to just sort of watch what daily life in Kamulu, or it's also known as the farm, is like. So Made in the Streets has a full-time staff, and they are all native Kenyans. There's one American who's teaching there on a short-term basis right now. So we didn't go in and teach these classes. Sometimes the teachers would ask us to help with a lesson, but for the most part we were observing how the teachers and students interacted with each other, how the students interacted in their free time, and just to see what life at Made in the Streets looks like so that we could come back and try to be the ears and eyes to share these stories and to give you all a glimpse of what it sort of looks like. So we would go on rotations to the primary school, the skills center, working in the nursery and working in the kitchen, and we would help with that. And then we would have the students over in the afternoon to write new to write new letters to their sponsors, and then we would go out and play with them during free time or chai time and just get to know them.
Once the students graduate, Made in the Streets helps them find a job, and if they need to, they are allowed to stay at Made in the Streets for a little bit longer. And then a lot of them get jobs in Nairobi, which is close to Kamulu, and they can take Matatu, which is a taxi, to Made in the Streets. And a lot of them do come back, like on Sunday mornings for church. While we were there, we were getting a couple of the graduates to come over for lunch to interview them. And we had picked about 3 that we were going to do, and we were like, okay. And then we talked to Millie, who works there. She's Kenyan, who helps out at the school and stuff. We said, Millie, will you help us gather up the graduates for us to interview? And she ended up gathering up like 15. And so it was cool that we had so many. We had to kind of scrounge up some more food, but it worked out all in the end. But it was cool to see the graduates come back, and a lot of them do because, and I talked to Millie about this, a lot of them feel like Made in the Streets is a safe place, and they know that they can go there for the community of Christ. And so a lot of them do come back to church in Kamulu, and it was really cool to see that and get to know them through that. And right now they're working on while we were there, we had a graduate dinner with a lot of the graduates, and they talked to them about doing home Bible studies, and they're really trying to start getting graduates to have Bible studies in their home once they get a job, to bring more people in. And so Made in the Streets is really good about setting examples for them for their future, and for guiding them in ways to bring other people to Christ. And it was just really cool to, one of the graduates spoke at the dinner, and it was really cool to hear her, and how whenever she meets people and people find out that she was a street kid, they're like, there's no way. And she's like, oh, but there is, because my God. And it was really cool to hear her story about just like showing that she was transformed by God, and that's how it is. And them getting involved with more people in their communities is one of the main things that Made in the Streets is working on with them right now, and it's really cool to start seeing that.
Most of us don't have a clue what it's like over there compared to there.
Right.
You brought up a point a while ago when you said about the police and said you go to a place that wasn't safe. My question would be, how safe is it when y'all are there? It's a two-fold question. And then when these kids come into this place and y'all are there, do people outside that want them back in their little game try to come around and say, "Kids, come out with us"?
No, Kamulu is a very small, while we were there, it was very safe. We weren't allowed to go to Eastleigh, but that was kind of its own thing. Where we were in Kamulu was very safe. It's very, not excluded, but Kamulu is small, and it was funny because we'd like be in Nairobi and talking to people, and they'd be like, oh, where are you staying? And we would say Kamulu, and people that live in Nairobi didn't even know where Kamulu was. And so it's a small village that really no one would care to do anything with, and so there was never a time where we felt unsafe. And so that was that side. Chris said the gangs, it's not, they do call themselves like little gangs, but they aren't gangs like we think of. And once someone is off the streets and once they go to the Eastleigh Center, they haven't ever really had a problem with people coming and wanting them back. It's almost like they see that there's better, but and I don't really know that very many people know where the Kamulu Center is, and so they've never had an issue with people coming and trying to get the kids back. They have had some students that have run away and that kind of thing, but the kids' safety and visitors' safety is very well done at Made in the Streets at the center where we are. And whenever Eastleigh isn't so overrun by police, it's a safe place too. But right now, just with some of the stuff that's going on in Kenya, it's not safe at this time. But in the past, visitors have been there. I know that our group got to go, and there was never a problem.
And to add on to that, every time we would be walking around either Nairobi and just meeting new people, everyone would talk about how much they loved Americans and what good ties Americans in Kenya had. So we were very welcomed. It is very safe for Americans to be there. We would always go with a guide into town. And as Amy said, people aren't reaching out to try to keep these kids. As we visited a base, someone that we thought might have possibly been either the drug dealer or someone did come up and was creating, some agitation in the group and was yelling at our translator saying, oh, why are you trying to take my kids? And Ken was yelling back, they're not your kids to have And as Chris mentioned, there are about 30,000 to 60,000 street kids in Nairobi. So even though we're looking at them and we see each face as a precious child of God, unfortunately these drug dealers just see it as another client. So if one goes, then they can just go out and find another one. So there aren't really strong ties to bring back every kid because to the streets, because they'll just go out and find somebody new.
And we even, whenever we went to the bases, one of the kids that grew up in that base would go with us, and there was never an issue of them trying to get them back. And I think part of that is, well, a lot of it is God's Spirit protecting us, but part of it is just that they see that they got a better life, and we encourage them that they can have that too. And so it wasn't an issue even with someone that grew up there with them, and he saw some of his friends that he grew up with and got to talk to them, but it wasn't an issue. Are there any final questions? That's what I was about to get into. Our new sponsorship program is launching, and it's going to be about $75 a month, and we have the breakdown cost of that. Other sponsorship programs are cheaper because most of the time you're only paying for like their school or their cost of living. But at Made in the Streets, we kind of do everything in one, and so you're paying for kind of a little bit of everything. But there are different ways that you can split that and things. But our new sponsorship is launching in October, and we actually have an intern that's there right now that's organizing all of that and getting that launched. And so, like Michelle was talking about, it's called Remade. And right now, we don't have any way that you can sign up to be a part of it, but we have ways that you can sign up to get more information. And here in about a month or so, if you want more information, if you're interested, we're going to have a paper that you can sign up at the booth to get more information. And Keb, who is the intern that is launching our program, is going to be emailing you in the next month or so and letting you know more information and as he gets more details. Because he is right now just kind of launching it. But we have 17 students that need sponsors, and that's kind of one of the goals of our tour right now is just to find people that are interested in sponsoring and helping our kids. Yes, sir. Water. Is that what you said? Go ahead.
One that we think about a lot is water. So we got to visit the Mathare slum, which is one of the longest continuous running slums in Nairobi, and they would have water, they would have access to it, but it would be in very limited supply and it wouldn't be the cleanest. Made in the Streets does have a well, so all of the water on the Made in the Streets centers is clean to drink. It was safe for us to drink it without having to worry about waterborne illnesses, but you'll see even people who are living in homes or apartments in Nairobi that are nicer and good homes that they still won't have the cleanest water.
Anything else? All right. Well, we want to thank you so much for letting us come. Like Michelle said, we will be at our booth. And if you have any more questions or if you just want to hear more stories or take a look at some of the things that the kids have made, we would love to talk to you and love to get to know you. Thank you so much for letting us come and speak. It was so good to be here and to be back home. And I just want to thank this church specifically for supporting me in this and letting me be a part of this and getting to come back and share it with you. Thank you.
Thank y'all very much. I just want to give us a little perspective real quickly. They're kicking off their summer tour, so Decatur is their first stop. So they're going to be throughout Texas and the southeastern United States over the next month. Is that correct? So in just a minute, Rick, I'm going to ask you to say a prayer as we close our class time and pray specifically for them and their ministry. We are involved with Made in the Streets through our special contribution each year. Last year, if memory serves me correctly, about $36,000 from this congregation went to Kenya to support that ministry. That's not including internship funds, and I want to speak specifically to you high school students. As you begin thinking about what you're going to do during your college years, I do hope you'll take some thought about traveling to a third world country and seeing that most of the world does not live how we live. And we have funds set aside for you as college interns. We always allocate a certain percentage of our special contribution for that. We also expect you to do some legwork and raise some money on your own. But we do take finances and have finances available for you to do that. And part of that, part of our special contribution and part of funding Amy's trip came from your checkbooks and wallets. And again, I always want to take the time to thank you for your sacrifice in that. We're out of time, and I'm going to ask Rick, we'll close our Bible class time and pray for this group.
Father, we're so blessed to be here this morning and to hear the way that you're working in Kenya. And we're blessed to be able to be a part of that. And Father, I pray that you'll touch our hearts with compassion for these children who find themselves in these situations. And we know it's not just in Kenya, it's all over the world. And Father, please help us to see the way you're working, to join you there and be creative in the ways that we can reach these children and share Jesus with them. We love hearing these stories of how he's transformed lives. And so, Father, I pray that even right now you might be touching some folks' hearts right here to help in sponsorships. I pray for these three as they travel around sharing that they will ignite in people's hearts a compassion for the things that stir your heart. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.